People who fetishized a city like NYC or Tokyo and then actually took a leap of faith to move there. How has your opinion changed since? Not really a specific city, but as someone who grew up in Hong Kong, I thought that American cities like LA, SF, and Seattle would feel more similar to what I was used to in terms of overall vibe, density, and skyscrapers, with the image I had of America being the world leader. Having lived in the US for a while, only NYC really ended up giving me the busy metropolitan city vibe that I was conditioned to expect from growing up in Asia. Asian metropolitan cities take urban population density to a whole level greater than anywhere else I've been. Hong Kong especially, but Tokyo as well. Americans who haven't traveled just do not grasp how low their population density is compared to places like Hong Kong. It's like a game of dodgeball every day, but if you get hit once, you gotta keep dodging, or you'll get hit again and again and again. The density in NYC is thanks in no small part to mass transit. That city has the most extensive subway in the United States, and because of that, people can be less car dependent. Meanwhile, most other cities are stymied by the need for parking. There is only so much density that you can build if you have to include parking. Yeah, I just visited, and the subway network there is incredible. Stations and cars need some cleaning up, but it's got the bones of a great system. I have decent light rail in my home city, and it looks like a children's play set in comparison. Seattle is more of a really big town than a city, in my experience. I lived most of my life in the Seattle area. There are a lot of people who think of Seattle and Portland as the big city, who have traveled very little outside of the Pacific Northwest. Not that this is necessarily their fault. Seattle is geographically quite isolated from most of the country, and traveling pretty much anywhere, besides possibly LA and ESF by plane, from there makes for a long travel day, so there's a fair number of people there who don't travel often. I'm looking at you, people who moved to Austin right after your first SXSW experience. I'm looking at all the people who watched Yellowstone and moved to Montana. How was winter? It wasn't nearly bad enough to stop more people from moving here, unfortunately. Move SXSW to August. Problem solved. I moved to Austin on a whim and absolutely loved it. Spent 5 years there and never regretted it. The nature and nightlife are unbeatable MO. Such a gorgeous place. I unfortunately had to move away for other reasons, but I hope to move back eventually. And then they become melted popsicles and summer haha. I at least like how easy it is to live in Austin without being beholden to the main city, so you can get the city life and nature life pretty easy. When I was doing construction management, my team was in San Antonio for 8 weeks, and then Houston for 8 weeks from May until the beginning of September. And I have never experienced such oppressive heat. We worked overnights, and it was still like 90s at 2 a.m. LMAO. The only thing came close was the 3 weeks we spent in Orlando during July, where it was like 1,000,000,000 degrees and 90% humidity, and it would sprinkle for like 15 minutes every day at like 1:30 p.m., which only made it more humid and never cooled anything off. It was like standing in the shower. It was awful LMAO. God, I miss Austin so much. Just up and moved there after my ex-BF wouldn't shut up about how cool it was, and once I got there, fell instantly in love. There for a decade, but then had to move back to Dallas for reasons, and although I'm happy to be back with my family, I miss it dearly. Like, I have no idea how I'm going to meet my dream Austin man in Dallas. It's like everyone is a Republican square here. Okay, rant over. LOL, currently in Austin. Second time here, great city, but it's surrounded by Texas. I really enjoyed Austin, but that part of it being surrounded by Texas is why it fell down a notch to me versus some other cities in the US. Everyone will tell me, but the BBQ scene is unreal. I'm not standing for hours in the line at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday for brisket. I'm good. I enjoyed Austin, but it also now feels a tad overrated. I moved to California when I was 20, spent about a year there. My motorcycle was my only means of transportation. It was paradise, but I missed my family and friends from back home. I moved back, started a little family, and I'm graduating from law school in a few weeks. Looking back, I would say that I do not regret moving there at all. It shaped who I am as a person because I had zero expectations to live up to while I was out there. Nobody knew me, so it was a period of self-discovery. Once I knew who I really was, I had nothing to hide from anymore, and I came home. I grew up in San Francisco, romanticized Vancouver, went there for study abroad. Everyone called me crazy for not going somewhere more exotic, but that's where I really wanted to be. It was awesome. So awesome, in fact, that I'm planning to move back permanently as soon as I graduate. I live in Vancouver, and I absolutely love it here. Moved here in 2007 from Calgary and never looked back. Rent is insanity, but it's so beautiful, I'll never live anywhere else. Vancouver is like a sleepier San Francisco with high rises, if that was even possible. Both cities are amazing though, and if you want a slower life, Vancouver is great for that. No more tech ads in Vancouver. Yeah, I love the laid-back vibe of Vancouver. Everyone seems more relaxed compared to the Bay. UBC versus UC Berkeley was interesting to observe. UBC students are also academically talented and driven, but they're not LinkedIn lunatics like we are, and they are not as high-strung. People felt more down-to-earth at UBC. I'm trying to move to Vancouver, currently in Orlando, and everyone around me thinks I'm insane. Except for my fiancé, who was on board immediately once I took him to BC for the first time. Glad to hear you don't regret it, makes me feel less crazy. It really is not hard to sell someone on BC. Mountains, ocean, forests, lakes. Van has culture. Lived in NYC for a decade. Loved it. Then was okay with it. Then with COVID, I'd had enough. I moved to LA and it doesn't really compare in any real way. But the weather is such a ridiculous blowout, I'm happier here. Outside is nice. I have a remote job and no car and pretend it's a walkable city. Exactly the same for me with London. Loved it, liked it, was okay with it. Then COVID killed it. I moved to the countryside, and the idea of moving back into London fills me with dread. Lived in Lisbon for around 6 years, lived in Seoul just short of a year, realized I absolutely cannot be away from nature. Moved back to my very rural hometown. We only got a McDonald's in 2020. I did about the same with Chicago, and am wondering if this may not be at least partially due to getting older. Big cities are fun, when you're young enough to enjoy it. Going out, lots of bars and restaurants to choose from, festivals every weekend, huge dating pool, etc. All that appeals quite a bit when you're single and in your 20s. A bit less so when you're married and in your 30s. And a whole lot less when you're juggling a couple kids in your 40s. I went from living it up in Chicago in my 20s, through a few intermediate moves through smaller cities and suburbs in my 30s as I grew my family, to living the quiet life in semi-rural New Brunswick, with a wife and kids at 40. And all of these places fit perfectly with who I was and what I wanted at those times in my life. We just getting old, fam. I never fetishized it, but Tokyo is way cooler than I ever could have imagined, even after over a year of living here. It is as safe, beautiful, convenient, and interesting as people say, and more so. Does Japan have problems? Yeah, I've detailed some in a second comment. But if we are comparing places in the world, Tokyo is fantastic, and holy shit is it big. Also, there is a huge amount of beautiful nature nestled all over the place here. And if there isn't a park nearby, the people of this city have cleverly woven nature into the walkways and buildings. You're never more than just a quick train ride away from changing your scenery from almost anywhere. It's impossible, literally impossible to see all of it. You never will. And it's always changing. So even if you could, which you can't, by the time you'd be done, it would all be different again. And it's impossible, literally impossible to see all of it. You never will. And it's always changing. So even if you could, which you can't, by the time you'd be done, it would all be different again. And that's just Shinjuku Station. I was there in late 2019, early 2020. You know what Shinjuku Station really needed, and what I was so fortunate to witness? Major repairs blocking off half the station, being 6 steps away from the friend you're trying to meet up with, but being separated by a massive temporary wall that diverts the walk to each other to a 24-minute excursion is a uniquely Shinjuku Station experience. Only in a big city can you have the same kind of hyper-specialized shops. It was a decade ago, but there's a whiskey bar in Tokyo where the owner will play Star Wars songs on his ukulele. We went and had a sampler set and had a great time. The only reason I wouldn't want to live there is the cost. Also, at 6 feet 3 inches, 19 centimeters, the entire country constantly attacked my head with light fixtures. Compared to the US, it is cheap to live here. It didn't used to be that way, which kept me from moving here for years, but nowadays it is. Food is super cheap, rent isn't bad. Healthcare is covered 70% by the government, nearly 100% if you are a student. Edit. Another user pointed out the 70% isn't necessarily for everything. Important distinction. Not to mention the conversion rate right now between the US and Japan. If you are paid in USD, every dollar you have here will be worth $1.50 or so. If you're making US salary, you can live so easily in Tokyo. If you're making Japan salary in Tokyo, it can be rough though. Obviously the locals do it, but if you're coming from the US, it can be a rude awakening. Americans are very privileged when it comes to salary, and that should be taken into consideration. Definitely, if you are going to get a job in Japan, expect to be paid as the Japanese are paid. In turn, the affordability, while not extremely horrible, is not nearly as attractive as it is to a tourist or an immigrant with a USD paying job. I'm about to experience that firsthand as I transition into working here from my US job. Not looking forward to the pay cut. I lived about 2 hours outside of Tokyo in Gunma Prefecture. The pay was more than sufficient, and I could hop on my bike and catch a bus or train to Tokyo and be there by 10 a.m. Best of both worlds, really. I was the stereotypical small-town southern girl who dreamed of living in NYC. I fantasized about it through my entire childhood, even before I first visited. Got my first job as a barista at 16, and told everyone it was so I could start saving up to move to NYC. Told every guy I dated in high school and college that our relationship had an expiration date unless they wanted to move to NYC. I don't think anyone really took me seriously, not even my parents. Well, I did it. Been in NYC for 10 years now, and my opinion hasn't changed. Loved it then, love it now, never leaving, knock on wood. This comment makes me so happy. I love that you always knew you'd end up there, and you did. Growing up, I always wanted to live in New York City. I have lived here for a decade and a half now. I would never live anywhere else. Same. Grew up in a small rural town, always knew I'd live in NYC, moved here after college 20 plus years ago. Coming home, flying into NYC from anywhere always feels amazing. So grateful to live here. Hell, I grew up in a small rural town and moved to Boston for college, have been here since 2008, and sidewalks are a life changer. Thanks a ton for watching. Drop a comment below. Have you ever romanticized a city and then actually moved there? How did it compare to what you imagined? And hey, don't forget to check out the other vids for more wild Reddit stories. Catch you later.